Sir Basil Brooke. As they approached their target, darkness fell.
The truck pulled up in the wrong spot. One possibility is they didn't know exactly which building was the barracks. Another possibility is there was children playing on the road. Possibly to avoid the children, they pulled up on the opposite side of the road, away from the children. Sean South was operating the Bren gun. When he moved to the tailgate of the truck, he opened fire on the barracks and he emptied his first magazine. Put his hand down to get his second magazine, there was no magazine there. So he turned to his number 2 in the Bren and he spoke in Irish to him. He said, "Na Pilerlana, Patrick Cowell na Pilerlana." The magazines. Patrick, where are the magazines? These number 2 quickly got the spare magazines and put them beside Sean and he continued firing. They were only 30 to 40 feet away from an upstairs window where the sergeant of the barracks was, and he was able to fire down into the milling mass of men. Of the 14 people, he killed 2 and he wounded 4. And from a military point of view, it was great shooting. Sean South was shot in the back from a machine gun fired from over his head. And so the fire came in at an angle of roughly 45 degrees, passing by his head and hitting him in the back. Fergal O'Hanlon was shot in the legs. I think he was on the road when he was shot.
The IRA column fled for the border, leaving behind 2 dying comrades, Sean South and Fergal O'Hanlon. Helicopters, ground troops and police scoured the countryside. The southern government finally gave in to intense British pressure. The border was sealed and both governments, North and South, ordered the arrest of all known Republicans. The attack on Brookborough RUC barracks showed both the strength and weakness of the IRA. Poor intelligence and blundering tactics may have resulted in a disaster, but quick to rebrand defeat as martyrdom, the Republican movement had once again achieved a resounding emotional victory. In January 1957, at the funeral of Sean South, 50,000 people lined the streets of Limerick.
You'd stand by your comrade like through thick and thin, and you would not. No way would you desert him like what he went through. You were prepared to go through. You felt that solidarity and comradeship like there then, you know. We felt for our comrades that had gone before us, like they was doing long prison sentences. We felt we owed it to them to make a success of our campaign, because we believed at the time, like there then, you know, maybe we were young, naive, that the best way of getting them out of jail was to be successful in what we were out to do, and that was to bring an end to partition and to unite, that the country could unite.
The Southern government, a weak coalition, collapsed, leading to a general election. Sinn Féin had their best result in 30 years, polling 70,000 votes and winning 4 seats. The most significant outcome of the election was that a strong majority government under Eamon de Valera assumed power. De Valera, a former IRA man, sentenced to death in 1916 by the British, had no tolerance for dissidents and no qualms about using repressive measures against the IRA. Now, in the summer of 1957, as the IRA campaign threatened to resume, he ordered the mass arrest and internment of Republicans. From this moment on, the fate of the volunteers was sealed.
Today, IRA are self-selected or self-appointed, who have no authority from the public at large. In our time, we were fighting an alien authority. Today, these people are fighting Irishmen, and we want to avoid any further possibility of strife or civil war between Irish, whether they're below the border or above the border.
Within days, 168 IRA volunteers and supporters were consigned to Corrigg internment camp. Among them, McGann, McCurtain and McLogan. A new army council was co-opted, determined to keep the campaign alive at any cost.
We're called up then about the end of August then in 57. I often remember like watching, lying in wait like all night like there, then recording the times. And we'd have everything in place then, and we decided then to set up an ambush for it. And we'd assemble the bomb that we were going to use in the ambush and get the volunteers together and draw up a plan and go ahead. And all of a sudden like there then, when we go the night we'd be ready to go hit it, there'd be no patrol had come at all.
Despite the impossible odds they were up against, the IRA was not prepared to take the ultimate step and attack the softest target available.
Bei Virginia a rihanama a gire occurred den fridge and dorn and doer ushiogina. Na kalgu kreitje vion. A kalgu and eden ake patient and cheer. Agus na ake pairs of vion are an assassin.
Fearing that an attack on the B Special's militiamen would plummet the North into open sectarian conflict, the IRA avoided all contact with them.
In some parts of the country, part of Northern Ireland where I spent many months, the only target available essentially was the B Special Constabulary, but you couldn't touch them. And equally, Belfast was excluded from any activity because of a fear of pogroms, which I think was a legitimate fear. But if you're engaging in a war, you either give it everything you've got, or you should leave the game, really.
With strong governments north and south and little public support for violence, it was becoming more difficult. Most of the experienced volunteers were interned by now. Young men with little training were now on the front line. The consequences were inevitable. In November 1957, a small active service unit of 4 met at a safe house in the border town of Aidentubber to prepare a mine.
I was looking at the explosives and all like that, and I was admiring the condition of it like then. It was first class like then. It looked like something freshly out of the factory. And I examined the 2 alarm clocks. And I says to Paul Smith, Lord of Mercy, Paul, I don't think you should use them. I don't trust them. I wouldn't feel safe with them, And there was a remark passed like then, was I nervous or what, like there then, But that's neither here nor there anyhow, like then. So I was getting up me few little bits and pieces anyhow, and I was terribly disappointed I wasn't going on the operation. And I was saying good night to the lads and wishing them safe trip and all. And the last words that Paddy Parle was singing, Éireann, my own lovely land, Éireann, my own farewell. They were the last words Paddy said to me, and I going out the door. And sure, that night later on, then we heard the blast like there then,
An dulles seach go Christmas len an de coolamar gá phléascáin agus las an spéir sús. Formar mac go raibh bhí cúigar marmh agus bertacha óla garman, má cáirde héan paddy go paráil. Wahí mé crús I macrí ag an lá sin. Bhí fergal mór ar tar éis an rud a hála. Ach bhí me dain I me inchine leanúint a raig leis an trid.
Aden Tubber was the worst single disaster of the campaign. While crowds grieved for the dead, there was a clear sense with the general public that the victims had given up their lives for nothing.
We had no way at that time of harnessing the public except by doing things and expecting them to support us. From a standing start, to start a guerrilla war, if you like, or guerrilla activity at least in Northern Ireland, and expect the people unhesitatingly to accept it. It was too big a leap, and it didn't happen. We hadn't the right to expect it, really.
I think the ordinary man in the street in the north wasn't interested at the time. They saw it as something from the south of Ireland that was imposing on the north.
In November 1961, Justice Minister Charles Hockey introduced military courts which handed down long sentences to captured volunteers. The IRA was forced to accept that it would have to stand down or be destroyed. In February 1962, the Army Council ordered arms to be dumped and hostilities to end. For now.
Bhí saging ag an am sin go raibh I láthair na staire. Bhí an taram le chéile. Bhí na haram sláán agin agus mar sinne agus bhí saging in our nintin go deochach siamh níos fearr go mbeadh na coinéalacha ar an talla níos fórstaí chun tríde chur suas. Agus is amhlaí a tharla in dhearan na dála.
The Irish resistance movement renews its pledge to eternal hostility to the British forces of occupation in Ireland. It calls on the Irish people for increased support and looks forward with confidence to a period of consolidation, expansion and preparation for the final and victorious phase of the struggle for the full freedom of Ireland.
After 5 years of sporadic attacks, ambushes and bombings, the IRA had killed 6 RUC men and lost 8 volunteers, most of them in accidents. Militarily, the IRA had been defeated. But by failing to address the root cause of the IRA campaign, London, Dublin and Stormont had merely dealt superficially with the beginnings of a devastating movement.
We had too many morals. As I said before, we couldn't win a war. We had too many scruples. Terrible things happened in the 70s and 80s. Awful things happened that no way could I, or I suppose anybody else, condone. But I do understand. I do understand why they happened. I personally, I couldn't have anything to do with them or approve in any kind of way. But I do understand exactly why they happened.
If I were asked the question, all that has happened in the last 30 years, since 1969 to now, has it been worth it? I'd have to say no, it hasn't. I don't think so. I think too many people died. Too many people died needlessly. There were too many innocent people killed in the whole struggle. And it's very hard to justify it in terms of what has been now achieved. I think people are more realistic now. And they are, I think generally speaking, prepared to settle for less than we would have settled for in our time, or an earlier generation would have settled for either. It's been a very painful, very sore learning experience for the whole society, North and South. particularly for the North.